Hi guys, it's been a while since I've done a training video, and ironically that's mostly because I've been so busy training. I'm still hitting 3 sword practices a week in addition to my other martial arts stuff, and I'm working 2 jobs because I'm still a school teacher and then I'm a ordained Zen priest, which means I have a lot of duties at the temple, and I haven't been able to get to as many HEMA or SEA events as I'd like because as one of the low priests on the totem pole, I end up working most Saturdays. But I'm still training a lot, I'm still thinking a lot, and I'm still writing about training a lot. So today's going to be more philosophical or mental side of training rather than like a particular technique or a pell drill. And that's really sparring mindset and methodology, because it's something that across different sword arts that I practice comes up and it's approached different ways, but I kind of have my way and my thoughts, and so I thought I would talk about it a little bit, especially because I end up in kind of like a coaching slash practitioner role a lot because of the practices that I go to. And so I think when we look at sparring, it's really important to look at the kind of goal. For me, sparring always serves a goal because I'm always looking to improve. There is a time to go and have a good bash with your friends, and sometimes, especially if I or one of my training partners, one of my students are really mentally tired, we might just say, F it, let's just fight and have fun. And that's good, and I think that you need to do that sometimes. But I think especially if you are in a place where you're trying to be competitive in tournaments, or you're just trying to improve, goal-based sparring, purpose-driven sparring is really, really important. And so when we go into sparring, almost always we talk about, like, what are you working on? And for the people that I'm working with, we almost always have both a mechanical and a strategic goal. And so that might be a mechanical, might be a particular shot you're trying to land. It could be a thrust, it could be an offside, it could be a particular technique. If you're in HEMA, it could be a particular play that you're trying to pull off, like a technique from that play. But that's the mechanical goal, a specific technique you're trying to make happen. And it could be a little bit more basic, like good power generation or not ending up on your heels. That would still be kind of considered a mechanical goal, right? A physical skill goal. And then from a strategic or a tactical goal, that's going to be more like how you want the fight to play out. So are you looking to be the one who initiates most often? Are you looking to control and maintain a certain range? Are you looking to be a counter puncher? Those are going to be things that are a little bit less technique dependent and more how the fight goes dependent. And so to break that down even more finely, a good way to think about it would be the strategy is the overall how you want the fight to go. Like, I want to control the range in this fight, or I want to control the tempo, the pacing of this fight, like how quickly engagements happen. And then the strategy would be, this is the way I'm going to make that happen, the plan. So if I want to control the range, maybe the strategy or the tactic would be, I'm going to sidestep every time they initiate their attack, just to kind of nullify what they're doing. Or it could be that I want to throw 3 intentions every time I throw, right? That would be more like a tactic to support the strategy of controlling the fight. For example, there's other ways to do it. So we almost always have a mechanical goal and then a strategic or a tactical goal. That's really, really important. And we try not to have more than that. There's only so many things you can manage at a time. You can't manage 5 things in a fight at a time most of the time. And I wouldn't recommend switching goals all the time within a practice because you need time to work on things. And so when we look at the mechanical and the strategic goals, it's very important that we are very clear on what our victory condition is or what our win is. Because if you're working on a particular shot selection or you're working on a particular tactic, that might mean that you get hit more often than you would, or that you don't hit your opponent more often than you would. And if you fall into the trap of thinking winning a fight equates achieving your goal, that's problematic. Or that achieving your goal means you should win, that's also problematic. So, because sometimes I'll have students and they'll be like, I'm working on this, and we'll go out and we'll spar, and then we'll be done after 10 exchanges or whatever, and they'll be like, ugh, I got my ass kicked. I'm like, well, but was your goal to beat me, or was your goal to do these things? And if your goal was to do these things, did you achieve those things? And if you did, you won. Because winning a fight and achieving a particular goal, those things are different. Sometimes they can be the same, but if you are working on a particular mechanical or strategic goal, then your goal in that set is not necessarily to beat your opponent in that set, right? That could be an outcome, but you have to be very mentally clear on what you're trying to accomplish in that set of fights, what your goal is, because winning a fight and achieving a goal are often not the same, but emotionally we can get that kind of twisted up a little bit. And so that's a good transition to the emotional thing. Emotional regulation is a really important part of sparring that I don't think gets talked about enough. And this is going to mean different things for different people. Some people get frustrated when a set is not going the way they want. And being pushed to a frustration level in practice is good to a certain degree. If you never get frustrated in practice, you're probably not practicing correctly, because if you're in a place where you're just better than everybody all the time, it's hard to grow. And if you're just falling back to the things you know to win sets at practice, you're probably not growing very much. So you're gonna have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone to grow, which can mean frustration. And tournaments are usually more stressful than practice. So getting pushed to a place where you need to practice your emotional regulation in practice is important. There is a point of diminishing returns though. If you are so frustrated that you're getting super tense and your skill level is going down, it's time to take a break. Maybe not for the whole practice, but you need to take a break. And so sometimes when I'm working with people and I see they're getting frustrated, I'll let it go for a while. And then sometimes I'll stop them and say, hey, have we hit a point where this is just frustrating and not productive? And if so, can we take a deep breath and calm down and dial it back and get back to that productive point, or do we need to take a break? And both of those things are fine. That's absolutely part of it. And so the kind of like stress inoculation, the emotional regulation of sparring is really, really important. Some people, they're not assertive enough, right? They get a little too kind of like almost sleepy, right? So we need to get them to, I don't like to use aggression because I think often there's an emotional baggage that goes with the word aggression. Like people think they have to feel a certain way. So I like to say assertive, but it's very true that some people are not assertive enough in a fight. And so we need to teach them to be assertive, step into that place and throw that shot. Other people, they're overly assertive. They do their thing without paying attention to what the opponent is doing and they get hit with stupid shit. And so the ability to emotionally regulate for calmness is going to be important for them. But it changes based on the person. It can even change based on the opponent. Some people, when they get in front of certain opponents, they get amped up in a certain way, or they get kind of like stuck. And so paying attention to the emotional regulation or the stress regulation part of sparring sets is really, really important. At the HEMA school that I run, we have a drill called Monster in the Middle, where everybody stands in the middle. Each person stands in the middle one time, and we take turns coming through. And at the most basic level, we come in and everybody's throwing a flat snap or an onside overhand. And you know it's coming, but you move around like it's sparring, and then you get your one attack. And the monster's job is to defend and counter. That's it. That's the whole thing. And we use this as a bridging drill, and it's really, really good for new people because taking somebody from static drilling and then dumping them in sparring doesn't usually work very well. But the monster gives just a little bit of pressure and variability. We can kind of control their stress exposure and their frustration exposure so that we can kind of build them, grow them towards full speed sparring. And then the monster drill has escalations where it becomes 2 shots and then they get to counter the counter. And so more so than even kind of coach sparring, we really get a chance to control the kind of stress and frustration exposure going from static drilling all the way to sparring. And even advanced students can really benefit from this with the kind of higher levels of that. So we have the kind of like goal-driven sparring, we have the emotional and stress regulation, and then we also have the after sparring conversation. And this is really important. Most people, I find, get overly fixated on the positives or the negatives. Usually it's the negatives, but that might just be the trainees that I work with. I tend to be very critical of my own fighting, and I seem to pass that down to my students a lot. But what I ask people is what went best and what went least well. I don't like to say what went good and bad, because again, bad can be kind of like emotionally loaded, and people can kind of get down on themselves. But what went best and what went least well. So if your goal was to land an offside, for example, offside shot, and you landed or manage to throw 3 good offsides in 5 fights or 10 fights, that might be what went best. And we can say, well, it went least well. Well, every time I threw it, I was leaving my head exposed. That's not good. We want to work on that. But I really think that the phrasing is really important. Sometimes people get more focused on the good. Oh, I did these things. I'm like, yeah, but you got cracked in the head 10 times. Well, yeah, but I did these things. Like, cool. But, we have to look at both sides of that. And then I think it's important to talk about, like, why did those things happen? Because sometimes, and I find this most with, like, kind of like just getting to intermediate range student, right? They're not quite beginners, but they're getting into intermediate. They're like, oh, I hit this 5 times. Cool. Do you know why that happened? Or, oh, I got hit in the head. Do you know why that happened? And usually they don't, right? And so it takes a little, but you want to have some kind of, some, not guardrails, but I think there's some tools that you can embed in how you hold that conversation that can make it more productive than just, well, I got hit in the head 10 times, I suck, or, well, I landed my offside, so I'm amazing, right? Like having some kind of lenses you can look at the post-sparring conversation, I think is really, really helpful. From the kind of coaching or the more advanced side of things, or just like a good training partner side of things, one of the things that I like to ask people is there a fight I can bring you that will be helpful? Because the way, and this is more for me because I tend to be in a more responsibility-based role. Like I said, I tend to be a coach / practitioner at most of the practices I go to. But it's helpful, one, when I say, is there a fight I can bring you that will be helpful? It forces my opponent, my partner, to think about what I'm doing. Like, what do they need to see from me to make their goals more workable, right? Because if your goal is to throw an offside or your goal is to manage range, but you don't accommodate for what the opponent's doing, that doesn't work out so well, right? You gotta, like, it's a fighting's an interaction. It's not a, you're not fighting against a mirror. But the other thing that's good for, so it forces them to think about things in that way. But the other thing that's good for me is that it forces me to maybe fight against type. I tend to be a very negation-based fighter. I want to just take away the opponent's tools, give them no space to breathe, and then hit them. That's my job. I want them to feel like they never got a chance to be in a fight. I just want them to feel helpless and then dead. That's how I tend to fight, right? But if somebody has a goal to take initiative and I just negate what they do, or I punish them every time they do it, they don't really get to work on what they are trying to work on, which means I'm not maybe being the best partner I could be in that moment. And forcing me to fight a little differently will force me to grow as well. So this is maybe for the people who tend to be in the upper echelon of the practices they're going to. This is how you can be a good partner and still have some growth opportunity without just like smashing the other person or giving up and letting them hit you. If the other person's working a particular thing and I need to be more aggressive, or I need to stick in the pocket a little bit longer than I naturally would based on how I like to fight, that's good. It forces me to fight in those uncomfortable areas that I maybe wouldn't otherwise if I didn't force myself to, which also gives me a chance to work on my like frustration and emotional regulation. So that all works out too. And it's a way to kind of like play a game. You can decide as the more advanced practitioner, like, okay, this person's working on these things. They only get to hit me here, right? They only get to hit the off body, and I'm not going to tell them. They have to find it. So if they do it correctly, they're going to have success. But if they don't find it themselves, they don't. And this actually gives me a chance to control the fight still. Like, I'm controlling what they do. They only get one thing. They have to find it, and I can kind of like guide them towards that. So I still get to practice controlling the fight. I still get to maybe practice fighting against type. So these are ways that I can grow even if I'm a kind of a more advanced practitioner. And so, yeah, I just wanted to talk about kind of like mindset and strategies in sparring, because I think we talk a lot about the physical stuff, but I don't think we always talk about some of these other things, the goal-based sparring, the post-sparring conversations, the emotional regulation piece, the stress inoculation piece, and kind of like different ways we can do it. So hopefully this is interesting and helpful, and hopefully I'll be able to come out with a few more training videos than I did in 2025, and I look forward to it. Thanks a lot.